G'day, my name's Jamie Hazelden and I've been travelling this great country for many, many years. And what I want to share with you is the great places that I've been to and the places that you can only imagine of getting to. I want to show you and introduce to you some of the colourful characters, sit round a campfire and reminisce and talk about the journey and the places that we're going to go to. So come along with me as I share this journey with you. Proudly supported by and powered by Custom Lithium. Out here on the outskirts of Inverleigh, it's easy to drive past without noticing the flat stretches of land just beyond the tree line. But during World War II, this quiet paddock played its part in defending Australian skies. Hidden beneath the grass and dust are faint remains of a wartime airstrip, a place where Royal Australian Air Force crews once trained, refuelled and prepared for missions that would shape the nation's history.
Well, after talking to Judy for a while,
it's a bit of a wet day out on the station today, and Judy said she'd show me a little piece of World War II history. And if you know me, you'd know there's no way I would knock that back, whatever the weather condition was. We didn't get to spend too long there. As you can probably tell, the rain was coming in and it could come down at any time.
so I think today we'll go and check that out.
Back during the war, the Royal Australian Air Force actually had another airstrip just east of Inverleigh called Augusta Downs.
Well, here we are, we're going up to the airfield. Well, the trouble they had, they couldn't land in Augusta Downs in any conditions, so they needed another airstrip that was longer and then they could land whatever time of the year.
I've been out on the station for just over a week now, and I still can't believe the size of it. Back in December 1944, the quiet airstrip became the scene of a bit of drama in the skies. A B24 Liberator, known as Tim Burr, was flying with the 49th Air Depot Group when one of its engines failed mid-flight. The crew, led by First Lieutenant Bucklew and First Lieutenant Morris, had no choice but to make a forced landing here on Inverleigh Airfield. They were a long way from home, about 750 miles southeast of Darwin, and the only way they made it this far was by throwing out heaps of cargo to keep the aircraft in the air. Their radio operator, Corporal de Grey, kept sending distress messages right up until the batteries finally gave out. With no aircraft available at Depot 4 in Darwin, the RAAF called in help from the 380th Bomb Group. A Liberator flew a team of mechanics from the 49th Depot Repair Squadron, along with the parts they needed to get the Tim Burr flying. The big bomber sat on the ground for 10 days while repairs were carried out before finally being salvaged on the 2nd of January 1945.
Now, take into consideration, this airstrip was here long before World War II, and then they put in a cross section. So you've got a runway that way and you've got a runway that way. And the great thing for them, the reason being that they extended this airstrip, was because it was gravel based and therefore water didn't hold, it run off, and then they could use it all the seasons of the year, but at the same time it wasn't affected by all the different winds, because the winds come in from east, west, north, south, and the great thing, only a short distance from Elk Creek. Decided that they needed to extend the runway. So this runway now is 3,200 metres, which is quite incredible when you think about it, up here in the Gulf. Well, this is one of the old World War II windsock posts, still sitting here today. And I'll tell you what, it's very similar to the old phone line posts. They slot in and they slip down. So they're a joint post that actually pieces together to extend up, but also pieces together to extend down. Not that you'd be able to do it these days. And then over here must be the old duty pilot footings. Now, I don't know exactly what that means, but this is the only thing around this area, or in this vicinity, of what I've read. been unchanged since 1943. It still sits here today nice and clear, but they're going to do some work on it to clear it and clean it right up. I want to take you down to some of the machine gun bases.
As time moved on, the land has slowly started to reclaim the place where these things once stood. The old airstrip, the campsites, the fuel drums, all fading back into the bush. It makes it a lot harder to find them now, almost like it would have been back in the war.
And this is one of the gun turrets. You can imagine in the day, they'd be positioned in there and they'd be looking straight up, and then they could go whichever way or direction they needed to, because it would have been a lot clearer in here, but they would have been putting camouflage over it. Like when I was doing down at Bribey Island and with one of the historians, we were talking about these, and what they used to do is they'd go kilometres down the road to cut fresh trees and plants and whatnot to cover them over every day or every few days. As soon as they started to go brown or anything like that, you could see that something's happened. So that's how they used to cover them up. But we did find, looking through the bush there, that there was an old top that sat on top of one of these. So pretty amazing, especially the condition of it. Still in here, the wood around it, the concrete. Well, we'll go and see what else we can find around here while we're here.
By early 1943, work was underway to extend the Inverleigh Station airstrip, but the wet season soon brought that into a halt. In March that year, a small RAAF team from the 29th Operational Base Unit moved from Augustus Downs to keep the strip serviceable. It was a remote posting cut off for much of the year, but it played its part supporting aircraft moving across Northern Australia during the war.
Well, looking at this the last time, when we're up the other end there, this looks like an old oven. It could have been an old oven, but it's some sort of a tank of some kind. Head gasket. There's just stuff scattered all the way through the bush here. Look at that, old leaves. Not that you can see it, but there was buildings around the place and they were all camouflaged, and they were actually done by one of the most well-known artists back in the day, cartoonists in fact, in 1943, and that was a famous cartoonist, Eric Jololith. I'm not sure how you say it, but something like that. Back in that era, 1943, he was well known. But just over here, I just want to show you something else that I think is pretty special to the area. Well, here's another one of these gun turrets. Now this one's in a lot better condition, as in the old gal. It actually looks a bit bigger, I'm not sure that it is. But a point of interest is, as I was saying to you about finding a hard lid on one of these, I found one just over here in the bush here. It's all mangled up, but you can see where these points here and over there and there would bolt on to the top of it or clip on, or however they made it work. And they would say that was so they could just cover it up, put trees over it if need be and whatnot, so that anyone flying over couldn't see it. Now this is that top I was telling you about that I think would sit over the top of the gun turrets. Now, as I was saying to you, it's a bit messed up and mangled up, but giving you an idea, you can see these bars that go across, and then if you look at, remember the thickness, what I was saying about, I reckon they went on right there, so they mounted to tuck it over and cover it. So what they tell me is these piers that were along here, they think carried a big water tank, and that's where they kept their water. And that water used to feed just over there to the mess hall where they used to eat. So that was the mess hall right there. And I'm guessing this is sort of like what we would call the grease trap right there. You know, it sort of gives you an idea of the size of it when you look at this concrete slab, when you think there's drainage underneath it as well. And then you've got all the mess hall, you've got this area here, over there you've got your kitchen areas. And the other thing I do want to show you is the old oven that's over here still. And that's a beauty, that is, but somebody pinched the door. Now, it's not every day you get to see an oven like this, old girl. What an absolute corker. And when you look inside it, it's still got all the concrete inside, concrete on top to contain that heat. But she is an absolute gem. The shame part is somebody come in off the road there back in the day when they knew it was here and pitched the door of it. But it's an absolute beauty. I don't think it matters wherever you travel in the outback and you get to the old rubbish dumps or bottle dumps as they are, because they didn't have nowhere to dispose of anything. But I tell you what, they must have used to drink a lot of beer back in those days. Look at this here. Normally, these are just smashed to pieces. Let's have a look at some ages. How old some of these are, because they're all different shapes and sizes. There you go. 1943. There you go. You know, these hidden bits of history scattered throughout this country is incredible. Now, this little track here was a little taxi track. And what they used to do is they'd bring the aeroplanes in through here and then they'd pop them into these, what they call bunkers, igloos. Look, if you know what I'm referring to, drop a comment down below. But that's where they used to tuck the planes away so they could hide them from the enemy that might fly above. But come in and have a look. So here, you've got a solid piece of ground. Up high, right here. Just over here, to this side, you've got a low piece. And then on the other side of that, you've got another high piece that's the same as this sort of thing. And that's what they class as your bunker or your igloo, where they used to tuck them away and cover them over. But you can see them, they're scattered all the way through here. So this is on your lower level. So you've got your higher level there and your higher level there. So they would have had a cover that went over the top of this to keep the aeroplanes all tucked away and hidden. Well, I've gone through and I've estimated there's about 6 of them floating around in here. They're overgrown, but they're here. But I'll tell you what would be interesting is to have a metal detector to just go through this whole area and just finding the little bits and pieces that have been lost and dropped over the years. Fascinates me. Well, they've had to put a fair bit of infrastructure in here really, because this would be a flowing creek that would run through here in the wet season. And if they didn't have this little bridge, well, it's quite large really, they wouldn't be able to get the planes in to tuck them away and hide them when they needed to. So they've put a bit of effort into here. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. A little bit of history back in World War II on Inverleigh Station, sitting here in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Make sure you drop a comment below and I'll see you next time. Oh yeah, don't forget to subscribe. And also, don't forget to check out the shop.